Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Fusion Deck User in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 31, Professor Akaba is still a honest person. Oh. You woke up. Carefully putting Winda's rough draft away, Hikaru walked toward Gem Knight Crystal. The two flame swordsmen quickly positioned themselves beside Hikaru, vigilantly watching the knight stuck in the ground. Crystal struggled weakly for a while, trying to pull himself out of the earth. Unfortunately, after being thoroughly beaten, he had no strength left. After trying 2 or 3 times, he gave up and stopped struggling. Instead, he looked at Hikaru and solemnly said, "Thank you for saving me. I am Crystal, a knight of the Gem Knight Order." Seeing the knight seem to have regained some of his sanity, the two flame swordsmen relaxed a bit and lowered their guard. "How did you end up here?" Hikaru asked curiously. "Sorry, I don't remember." Crystal wasn't sure either. "I only remember I was leading a team to clean up pollution. I remember now. I was controlled by the power of shadows, almost becoming their puppet, and if my comrades hadn't forcibly expelled me from our world, I would have infected the others." Expelled? Banished? Hikaru couldn't quite understand what he meant. He then explained the recent events to Crystal, causing Crystal's head to drop lower and lower, almost as if he wanted to bury himself in the earth. Only then did Hikaru ask about Crystal's past. Through this, Hikaru learned a new piece of information, or rather, remembered something he had never cared about before. As everyone knows, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card has not only text but also an important part, the card art. Otherwise, just holding a bunch of papers filled with text wouldn't be very interesting. The card art connects different cards. For example, Gaia evolves from a knight into a chaos warrior, the story of Beast King being beaten by various beasts, or the tale of an angel who had no self-awareness playing with various sacred artifacts and eventually being punished by the gods. These are all classic small stories. Outside of these, there are also large series, such as the DT world where the Gem Knights exist, and the Dragon Swordsman world where the alchemist resides. These large continuous stories often involve many related characters, factions, and events, filled with death, separation, friendship, and terrifying disasters that threaten the survival of entire worlds, and so on. The DT world, where the Gem Knights exist, is especially fraught with disasters, with apocalyptic-level catastrophes appearing one after another. From the first episode to the grand finale, there are hardly any disasters smaller than the destruction of a clan. At the very least, they can wash the surface of the planet. However, the story Crystal spoke of was different from what Hikaru knew. According to Crystal, he was just one of many Crystal Knights. Although he was a captain, he was certainly not the same Crystal captain Hikaru knew, who was at the Stardust level. His usual job was handling various pollutants and training new knights for combat, which meant dueling. And this was the biggest difference between card art stories and dueling spirits. In the DT world, there were no cards and no duels, people fought with real weapons. If you didn't fight well, you'd die. But duel monsters were different. They were about training to play cards. The relationship between the two is like origin legends and the fairies born from those legends. To put it simply, the Crystal from before is like King Arthur from ancient legend, regal, mythic, and steeped in tradition. But the one in front of Hikaru now? He's more like Saber from Fate/Stay Night, same origin, but reimagined into a whole different battlefield. Connected in spirit, not in substance. However, the path of evolution for spirits is no longer singular. This Crystal could also become the savior of the DT world or even maintain his current state forever. Similarly, the alchemist from the other world was in the same situation. And this kind of thing was also depicted in the original work. For example, in the original, the Shadow Realm and the Spirit World was full of evil and misdeeds, but in the card art story, the Shadow Realm actually had 2 factions, one good and one bad. Hikaru-sama, thank you for waking me up. After Crystal finished speaking, it seemed like he had regained some strength and struggled to pull himself out of the earth. He knelt on one knee and said to Hikaru, I am willing to offer my strength to you and become your knight. However, my comrades are under attack by shadows and darkness. I cannot let them survive alone. Hikaru didn't mind much. Whether or not he got the knight didn't matter. But the alchemist, standing nearby, seized the opportunity to show his worth. Do you know how to get back? From what you said, your knight order has encountered this situation before. You would send the infected creatures to a different dimension to isolate them and then slowly figure out how to cure them. So I ask you, do you remember which dimension you were sent to? Do you even know which dimension you're in now? You were sent to a broken dimension for unknown reasons, then discovered by a human, and after many twists and turns, you ended up in this dimension where I am. How did you find your way back? Did you just crash into a dimensional wall? Crystal was sweating profusely, unsure of what to say. In my opinion, you might as well follow this human. The world this human comes from has already developed dimensional exploration technology. Perhaps one day, they might find your home, don't you think? You have a point. Crystal nodded in confusion, then bowed again to Hikaru. Hikaru-sama, please allow me to offer you my strength. Good. Of course. Hikaru responded cheerfully. It felt nice to have someone speak for him. Immediately, in front of Hikaru, Crystal's body emitted a dazzling white light. His body began to slowly shrink, transforming into a brilliant gem, and in the end, into a card. Gem Knight Crystal. Crystal's physical condition wasn't good, so he could only revert to card form to recover. How rare, Hikaru thought, catching the card and putting it away. It was rare to obtain a usable monster for his main deck. Hikaru looked toward the alchemist, who gave a slight bow. He didn't appear to have any overwhelming power, instead exuded elegance. Rest assured. As an alchemist, I am more than happy to follow a greater fusion master. Besides, we've already agreed to a deal. Fusion master. As a spirit, the alchemist always followed his word. Since Hikaru saved him, he naturally wouldn't break his vow. After watching Hikaru's duel, he realized Hikaru was truly a fusion master beyond his expectations, making him even more satisfied. That's why, when Crystal wanted to leave, he spoke up to keep him from going. He didn't follow the usual practice of dueling Hikaru to settle things before following him. Not at all, not at all. I'm still far from that level, Hikaru humbly replied. Compared to the plain Crystal, this alchemist was an entirely different kind of monster. Full Metalphos Alcest was a fusion monster with 0 attack and defense, besides a level 1 monster. The fact that both his attack and defense were 0 would likely make many seasoned card players uneasy, yet being a level 1 fusion monster only highlighted how terrifying he truly was. Actually, in Hikaru's eyes, even considering his currently unusable Master of Chaos and the ultimate ancient gear giant which could only be used occasionally, none of his fusion monsters were as strong as this alchemist. Above all, he was essentially a Thousand Eyes idol that could activate its effect during the opponent's turn. He could turn the opponent's monsters into his own equipment during their turn. Truly a master among monsters. Although summoning him was more difficult than summoning Thousand Eyes idol due to the condition of must fusion summon, there were always other ways. So, his final haul consisted of a Crystal Knight, a Psychic Alcest, and a rough draft of Winda. A truly bountiful return. Far exceeding Hikaru's initial expectations. All thanks to the man who sent them. Professor Akaba is such an honest person. Chapter 32, Return. Alchemist, do you have any healing potions? Realizing this broken dimension probably had nothing else, Hikaru moved to Professor Growler's side, first returning the cards he had previously borrowed from him to his deck, before helping him lean against a large rock, furrowing his brow. How long has it been? Why hasn't he woken up yet? Although Growler was often unpredictable, when danger struck, he didn't run away immediately. Instead, he prioritized handing over anything that could save his life to Amagi, ensuring his safe escape. No matter his educational level, at least in some respects, his teacher's morals were absolutely outstanding. He definitely didn't want to leave the professor unconscious like this. Don't worry, I checked your companion's body. He should only be unconscious for another 2 hours at most. He just has low adaptability. Alchemist shrugged. I see. Hikaru nodded, finally feeling relieved. In the later stages of the original story, Growler could be considered the best professor. But in the early stages, beneath his comical and ugly appearance, his protection for his students had already shown through. For instance, although he was almost forced to participate in shadow duels before facing death, his thoughts weren't filled with resentment. Instead, he used his final moments to teach his students that no matter how strong the darkness is, it can be overcome. Don't be afraid and face death calmly. He was a teacher who would be willing to die for his students, so even though he was often disorganized, Hikaru, who knew the future, didn't hold any ill will toward him. He had invited the professor mainly because of the professor's high status, the forced exit device, and most importantly, Ancient Gear Golem, one of the best fusion materials currently in his deck. According to his thoughts, 2 of them could at least dominate the battlefield, if not be invincible. Who would have known that the dark powers would control Gemnite Crystal and make him attack them without dueling first? Taking advantage of the current situation, Hikaru asked about the alchemist. How did he end up here? He asked and learned that the alchemist disagreed with his teacher's views, so he decided to leave the Alchemy Academy, to work alone and prove his theories through his own hands and experiments. So what's the problem? The Philosopher's Stone, Alchemist replied. The Philosopher's Stone? Amaji Hikaru stared at Alchemist in surprise. What's so strange about that? My mentor said the ultimate pursuit of alchemy is Philosopher's Stone, and stuff like immortality and universal medicine are mere byproducts. Alchemist tapped his staff on his back, shaking his head. I had a big argument with him because I thought he was talking nonsense. Alchemy's ultimate pursuit should be gold. The Philosopher's Stone is just a tool to turn ordinary metals into gold. Wow, a fundamentalist alchemist. Hikaru glanced sideways at the various equipment around them, narrowing his eyes, and cautiously asked, So, you're just making gold here by yourself? Ha! I've already used up all the materials I brought with me, and yet nothing has come of it. Alchemist scratched his head and sighed. But I do have some byproducts which I have no use for. Master, would you like them? He rummaged through a nearby box and pulled out a large pile of items, handing them all to Hikaru, who took and carefully examined them. In no time, Hikaru recognized them. They were all low-level monsters without spirits, normal monsters. He raised an eyebrow. That works too. The fusion materials for the full Metalphos Alcest are precisely normal monsters, so it's not surprising to have a bunch of them with him as materials. Although most of them were useless, it wasn't a big problem. They could be used for super fusion. Sweet. Saved some money. Hikaru thought as he put the items away. After a while, once Professor Growler woke up, he simply told him that the duel was over. Professor Growler was slightly confused about what had happened. He only remembered being knocked out by a rock, but after hearing Hikaru duel with his cards and gaining recognition from the spirits, he didn't dwell on it and even felt pleased. Mamma mia! I don't have to face the spirits directly, thank goodness. After a short rest and giving the professor time to fix his hair, Hikaru and Growler stepped into the dimensional gate and returned to their own world. Compared to last time, Hikaru didn't feel as bad this time. He was just a bit tired, far from the feeling of running a full few kilometers as before. It seemed there was a difference between the 2 dimensions. The Chaos Warrior's dimension was just too strong. Great heavens! Professor Growler stepped on the familiar school floor, took out a handkerchief, wiped his forehead, and sighed long. Meanwhile, the principal, who had been waiting for them, kindly walked over to greet them. How did it go, Professor Growler? Everything's okay, right? Ha!
No, everything's fine. Growler clasped his hands in front of him, rubbing them vigorously and acting flatteringly toward Principal Shepard.
It felt completely ordinary and effortless, as easy as breathing. Sleeping through the entire thing was too embarrassing.
Before he had promised Hikaru if he performed well on this exam, he would guarantee to give him extra points in exchange for keeping his own situation a secret.
So, Hikaru just kept nodding in agreement. All right, then, Hikaru, have you gained the recognition of that spirit? Hikaru nodded.
Haha, it seems next year, that guy from the north will only have the new students challenge in a friendly match, and definitely won't let the second years participate.
Principal Shepard laughed heartily.
Well then, thank you for your hard work, Professor Growler. Looking at the three of them laughing and talking, Leo Akiba, standing on the other side, wore a gloomy expression so heavy it could drown the room.
No surprises? Nothing unusual? As easy as breathing? What does that mean? Growler, are you hinting my methods are useless and making you laugh?
His hands, which had been clasped behind his back, clenched into fists.
What does Growler's ridiculous smile mean?
The Gemnite crystal, which he had recovered in the strange ruined dimension with the help of employees from Kaiba Corp, was accompanied by a few other Gemnites, all with strange darkness. Although he hadn't used his full strength, the people from Kaiba Corp were no fools.
The darkness of the Gemnite crystal far surpassed that of any other Gemnite card. How could two ordinary people survive so quickly and safely? Even if Hikaru had been to another dimension, how strong could his spirit be? Wasn't it just the flame swordsman? How long could it hold up? Could it be? Just then, Growler turned around with a smile, looking at him.
The grin was strange and massive, frozen on his face, looking almost like a giant lustful jar, making it very eerie and abstract.
He's mocking me.
Leo Akiba felt as if he might explode with anger.
Did he already expect this scene? Did he even plan this step? Could it be that he has the spirit of the ancient Gear Golem? That would indeed counter the Gemnite crystal. What a damn old man.
No, calm down, don't get angry. At least now, I learned about one of Growler's trump cards. He took a deep breath, exchanged a few words with the others, claimed he still had work in his department, turned around to leave the teachers to their tasks, and stormed off. He feared he wouldn't be able to hold himself back from directly fighting Growler.
No, I can't expose myself, I can't let my plans be hindered. Mamma mia, what's wrong with him?
Seeing Leo Akiba storm off, Growler was a little confused.
He lowered his voice and asked Hikaru, could it be I offended him somehow? Professor Akiba might just not be good at chatting with people. Hikaru guessed a little of Leo Akiba's thoughts. He figured his plan had fallen and Akiba was upset, but he didn't mind. He had already figured it out. Leo Akiba was unworthy of being the leader of Fusion. Deliberately provoking internal conflicts, treating students like trash, militarizing student management, and secretly plotting against students, trying to trap them in another dimension. How could Fusion go well in such a department? He deserved it. Hikaru had decided that in the future, he would hollow out the Fusion army and create a new Fusion club for himself. As for now, the midterm exams are approaching. He began planning in his mind. The Duel Academy exams were divided into two parts. One was a written test, the other, obviously, was practical combat. His goal was, of course, the scholarship. So now, he needed to fully immerse himself in his studies. Chapter 33, The Arrogant Duel. A few days before the exam, at the airport on Academy Island, a boy with an odd hairstyle resembling a windmill jumped off the plane. He flicked his hair, took a deep breath, and gazed at Duel Academy's high tower, heaving a sigh. I'm back, Duel Academy. His name was Chaz Princeton. A first-year student from Obelisk Blue. Good luck, Chaz. The president's always watching over you. I'll be rooting for you in the exam too, the pilot shouted to Chaz from the plane. Chaz nodded but didn't respond. Would the president really be watching me? He was doubtful. Stepping forward, he walked toward Duel Academy's high tower. Just before reaching it, he paused, hearing the surrounding chatter, and fell into deep thought. He, Chaz Princeton, was Seto Kaiba's disciple. Through a certain twist of fate, he obtained a card with a spirit inside it, leading him to believe he was chosen by the heavens. He began participating in various beginner-level tournaments, winning one after another since he was a child, and through family connections, he even met Kaiba president, Seto Kaiba, and became his disciple. After that, he smoothly became a student of Obelisk Blue at Duel Academy. But he was beginning to doubt himself more and more. Many people doubted his abilities, believing he was only in his position thanks to the power of the Princeton Group and Kaiba Corp, using money to climb up, which made him question himself even further. Could it be my victories in all those beginner-level leagues were because of my older brother's secret assistance? Could it be I only caught my master's attention because my deck had the spirit he longed for? The power of doubt tortured him. He swore to show those who looked down on him and didn't recognize him that Chaz Princeton never relied on anyone. He swore to make others acknowledge him. He swore to remain undefeated at Duel Academy. Then, that day, he saw Jaden Yuki, the chosen one, who had never even been to another dimension, yet still gained the approval of a spirit. He lost, in a friendly duel, to Jaden Yuki of Red, destroying all his prepared strategies. In deep pain, he chose to leave the academy, claiming he needed to train, but truly just ran to Kaiba Corp to hide. Unexpectedly, during his self-imposed isolation, his master passed by, saw him, called him a fool, dragged him into the simulation duel room, kicked him, and made him duel a crazy AI using a hero deck. I won't be afraid anymore, Jaden. He silently encouraged himself. Now, he was terrifyingly strong. Wow, Hikaru, let me copy your notes. Bro, so sly. I want to see it too. Before entering the classroom, Chaz was about to dramatically kick open the door and announce his return loudly, but he heard intense discussions coming from inside. Standing at the door, he blankly watched Jaden Yuki, Cyrus Truesdale, and many other students he didn't recognize or only vaguely remembered gathered around a desk, chattering. Amagi-san, where's the alchemy formula on the page? Amagi-san, what's this mercury secret? What the? Chaz stood stunned. The first to notice him was winged Kuribo, floating beside Jaden, chirping curry. Hearing its voice, Jaden spontaneously turned and looked toward the door, spotting Chaz. Oh. Chaz, you're back. Chaz, you're back? Cyrus looked over and politely greeted him. What's going on here? Chaz, who had planned a grand entrance, was caught off guard. He was fuming but instinctively asked. Isn't the exam coming up? Ugh, the academic courses are so troublesome, Jaden scratched his head. Especially alchemy. No one understands it except for Cyrus and Amagi-kun. Exams. Chaz felt a little nervous. Unlike Seto Kaiba, who was a natural genius, Chaz wasn't quite so versatile. He hadn't attended many classes, and even though Kaiba Corp's teachers were tutoring him, he might have missed something. Besides, lately, he'd been dueling robots every day, leaving him with little time for class. So, this Amagi guy is really good at alchemy? I have no memory of him at all. Come to think of it, why is alchemy even part of the academy exams? I thought it was just an interesting class. He didn't understand it at all. It wasn't just him, in fact, very few students at the entire school understood alchemy. Even Bastion was completely clueless about it. The only reason he could help other students by drawing knowledge points for them was simply because he was very good at studying and had an excellent memory. This was also one of the reasons why Hikaru had set his goal as scholarship. Not to mention Jaden and Cyrus, who also fell asleep in other classes, and even the students in Blue Dorm who were unable to stay awake during alchemy class. Therefore, Hikaru had a huge advantage in this course and could use it to boost his score. Apart from that, Duel Academy didn't test things like literature, math, chemistry, or physics. Their exams were very simple, cards and rules. After all, it was Duel Academy. The former involved card names and effects, while the latter was about various cards and the rules of duels. In the original, Professor Growler had taught related courses and explained the details of things like field spells to students. The teachers at Duel Academy were eager to break down every detail of dueling and explain the deeper meanings behind them. In short, Hikaru had no confidence in taking cultural exams, having not taken one in 5 or 6 years, but if it was a Duel Academy exam, he was confident about scoring well. What? Jaden lost to that guy? After initially being confused, Chaz asked about the recent events at the academy. It was only then that he realized Jaden had lost to Hikaru, making Hikaru the representative for Duel Academy's exchange duel. He first stared in shock at Hikaru, who appeared to be a kind and gentle person, studying alchemy, then immediately turned around and glared fiercely at Jaden. How could you lose to someone else? What's wrong with you? It's dueling. Isn't losing and winning normal? Jaden scratched his head, confused when he heard Chaz's words. Besides, Hikaru is really strong. That's nonsense. Only I can beat you. But you lost to me. Shut up. Stop talking. Chaz slammed the desk furiously. It's settled. This exam, I'll defeat Hikaru for you. Come and see my new power. On the other side, Hikaru couldn't hold back any longer. Why is he acting like some kind of story boss? Chapter 34, Chaz. The written exam lasted for 3 days, and in the meantime, Hikaru felt pretty good. Most of the questions were ones the teachers had already covered. The few advanced questions were actually just old problems in a different form. For Hikaru, a student trained in a rigorous education system previously, these questions were easy once he familiarized himself with them. And although he could confidently guarantee even Yu-Gi-Oh! Judges sometimes get confused by the rules of many Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, at least Duel Academy exams didn't have that kind of thing. Additionally, there was the alchemy course. Not only did Hikaru have a natural talent for alchemy, but even without that talent, he could always ask an alchemist for help. Of course, if anyone found out, it would definitely count as cheating. However, he wasn't the type to cheat just for the sake of grades, but it did make him feel more at ease. After a few days of written exams, Hikaru was now fiddling with his deck, thinking about today's practical exam. While the written exams were important, in Duel Academy, practical performance naturally held more weight and could contribute more points. Since his goal was to be number 1 in his grade, he naturally aimed to win. And his opponent, unsurprisingly, would surely be Chaz. Although the academy was generally fair, sometimes, certain students made things more fair for others. In the anime, Chaz was fine, he would be immediately expelled if he cheated. But this world's Chaz, who was a disciple of Kaiba Sito, could undoubtedly count on his teacher's connections if he wanted to face Hikaru in a practical exam. The teachers would probably be more than willing to help him out. Honestly, if it was the Chaz from the original facing him, he would probably be just fine. Firstly, as a duelist, Chaz's energy was naturally high, so he was definitely worth being a daily opponent. In the original, although he was positioned as the second male lead, he was always overshadowed by other characters. Early on, he was overshadowed by Cyrus, then by Aster Phoenix in the middle, and later by Jesse. Despite being the second male lead, most of his moments were taken by others. So, as an opponent, Hikaru's chances of winning were innately higher, making it easier to earn a scholarship. However, in this world, Chaz had become Kaiba Sito's disciple, just like in the manga, because of a different historical development. Hikaru shuffled his main deck and extra deck. First, his main deck. After 2 months of iterations, he had already removed some useless fusion cards. The remaining cards mostly consisted of easy and simple fusions, strong fusion monsters, and flame swordsman related cards. Although his main deck still didn't have as many monsters as other people's decks, he no longer worried about not having enough monsters. In addition, cards that had remained in the deck without being fused, like Cannon Soldier, Gigatech Wolf, and Burstinatrix, meant his deck was, in a way, half monsters. However, his main deck still had some abstract cards that were relatively difficult to use. Beyond that, his extra deck had become much more luxurious than before. Removing cards like Brachioratus and Golden Mammoth, his extra deck had been almost completely replaced. The core cards included 2 Flame Swordsmen, 1 Dark Flare Knight, Flame Wingman, Inferno Wing, Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, and even some newly added cards like Cyberblader, and the exciting but currently unused Master of Chaos. This also brought along some new problems. That was, his extra deck was almost full, and he would need to remove some older fusion monsters. Hikaru hadn't thought about this before because, in his memory,
the extra deck in the anime could have as many cards as needed.
But after being reminded by his teacher about the number of cards in the extra deck, he remembered that in the original, Jaden had also worried about what to remove in order to add Shining Flare Wingman. He shuffled his extra deck. It was still almost full, but not quite. Even if he added full Metalphos Alcest he had just acquired, the extra deck still wouldn't be full. Even counting the Cyber Dragon fusion monster that had been created through Super Fusion after a duel, it was still enough. However, it was essential to plan ahead. Next match, Obelisk Blue Chaz versus RA Yellow Hikaru. Please head to the designated arena to prepare. Hearing his name, Hikaru promptly packed away his deck and went to the exam hall. On the other side, Chaz had been waiting for a while. Ah, Hikaru's opponent is Chaz? Go for it, Chaz. Why are you cheering for me, you idiot? Then, Hikaru-kun, go for it. Just you wait, Chaz shouted angrily at the audience. Then, he turned and looked at Hikaru. Honestly, Hikaru's appearance made him a bit uneasy. Students in purple uniforms were members of the Fusion Club. Their reputation among regular students was very bad. They were mostly considered crazy. Behind Hikaru, there were also a few Fusion Club students following him. When they saw Hikaru's opponent, they started gossiping. Is Hikaru's opponent that Chaz? Isn't he the guy who got through by the back door? I heard that after he lost to Yuchan Jidudai, he ran away. How dare he come back? To be in the same dorm as a guy like him is really depressing. Good thing I switched to purple. Go, Hikaru. Go for it, Hikaru, show that guy who's boss. Chaz frowned and clenched his fists, yet didn't argue or say anything. Hikaru, on the other hand, immediately dropped his face and yelled to the students behind him, "Stop making me look like the villain." The Fusion Club students were still heavily influenced by the atmosphere of the activities department. He turned around, put a smile on his face. "Chaz, long time no see, I'm Hikaru from the first year of the Fusion Club." Although still annoyed, seeing Hikaru like this made Chaz feel slightly better. "Don't call me Chaz. I am, Chaz Lightning." He raised his hand high and yelled at the students behind Hikaru. Okay? Hikaru hadn't expected that. Although the timeline had changed a bit, Chaz's level of delinquency hadn't changed at all. Duel. ×2. Hikaru, LP, 4000. Chaz, LP, 4000. My turn. Chaz, eager to show off and prove himself, drew a card at lightning speed. That was fast. Hikaru thought. I normal summon, Armed Dragon, the Armored Dragon. A dragon warrior with copper-green scales and red armor flew out of the card. Armored Dragon? When he saw that the North Academy still used armed dragons, he thought Chaz wouldn't be using them in this world. Moreover, he didn't expect there to be another series of cards for them. Armed Dragon, the Armored Dragon, Level 4 WAND Dragon 1900 ATK. And 1900 attack, Level 4 monster? Sure enough, that guy must have used Kaibacorp's influence. How else could he have easily gotten such a rare card? The surrounding students began to discuss in hushed voices. This only made Chaz more irritated. However, Hikaru took a deep breath, raised his dual disc, and shouted, I also have a card that everyone doesn't have. The key is, whether or not it's used well. Otherwise, everyone will just be like that senior Ryu, holding onto powerful cards but not knowing how to use them. The Fusion Club students came to see him, whether to idolize him or simply to learn some techniques. Since they were already there watching, he had to take responsibility and put on a great performance. He looked at Chaz, who was a bit confused, and snapped his fingers lightly. Come on, Chaz, let me see you duel. Chaz stood there, frozen with his card for a while, before finally taking a deep breath. Now he understood why Jaden lost to Hikaru, but he didn't get discouraged. In fact, he seemed quite happy. So, there were people like this in the Fusion Club too? It's Chaz Lightning. Chapter 35, Feeling. Even though this man in purple didn't seem as detestable as he had imagined, Chaz hadn't forgotten, this was the person who defeated Jaden Yuki, the one he had to take down. So, after focusing entirely on the duel and blocking out external distractions, he quickly set 2 cards in his spell/trap zone. I set 2 cards and end my turn. Then, it's my turn. Hikaru swiftly drew a card and immediately revealed a spell card from his hand. I activate the normal spell, Instant Fusion. Fusion already. Chaz was taken aback. By paying 1000 life points, I can special summon a level 5 or lower fusion monster from my extra deck as a fusion summon. However, the summoned monster cannot attack and will be destroyed at the end of the turn. Hikaru, LP, 4000 3000. I fusion summon, come forth, Thousand Eyes restrict. A grotesque, eyeball-covered Eldritch God emerged from the card. Just looking at it made one's skin crawl and stomach churn. Thousand Eyes restrict? Chaz hesitated briefly upon seeing it but didn't waste a second to flip over one of his set cards. Wait, during your special summon, I activate my trap card, Burst Breath. Under the watchful eyes of all the examinees and instructors, the wind-armored dragon took a deep breath, unleashing a furious torrent of flames. This card allows me to tribute a dragon-type monster on my field and destroy all monsters on the field with defense points lower than that monster's attack. Armored Dragon's attack is 1900, and Thousand Eyes Restrict has 0 defense, so it's destroyed. The emerald flames engulf the Eldritch God, reducing it to dust. At the same time, the dragon, seemingly exhausted, dissolved into light and vanished from the field. Ha! Why did Chaz use that trap card? Cyrus, who had nothing better to do due to his low ranking, watched the duel, asking. Thousand Eyes Restrict couldn't attack anyway, so wouldn't it have been fine just letting it get absorbed? No. That wouldn't do. Someone interrupted his train of thought. Misawa, you're here? I've been here the whole time. Bastion's forehead twitched in annoyance. Hikaru claims to be competing with me for the top spot in our grade, so of course, I have to watch this. Then why did you say that just now? Wouldn't not using Burst Breath save a card? No, you're thinking too simply. Misawa shook his head. If you know this, then Hikaru obviously does too. Instant Fusion is a powerful card with drawbacks. As a fusion duelist, Hikaru understands this better than either of us. That means he must have a way to take advantage of it. Like Flame Sword's Realm. Jaden suddenly interjected. I've seen him use that combo before. Oh. Cyrus finally understood. But, Chaz doesn't even know who Hikaru is. Bastion crossed his arms, deep in thought. Does he know what cards are in Hikaru's deck? To make such a decision at that moment. He really is Kaiba's disciple. It's instinct, pure instinct. Jaden beamed from the side. A duelist's natural reaction. That's the Chaz I know. Yes. Chaz's play just now had been entirely based on instinct. He recognized Thousand Eyes Restrict and knew what it could do. Logically speaking, there had been no real need to react so aggressively. Regardless, he chose to destroy it anyway because something in his gut told him if he didn't, things would only get worse. Hikaru glanced at his hand and helplessly shook his head. Then, I activate the continuous spell card, Future Fusion. Hikaru stroked his chin. I'll set one more card and end my turn. In that case, at the end of your turn, I flip over my set card. Quick play spell, Armed Dragon Flash. I special summon Armed Dragon LV3 from my deck. Let's go, Armed Dragon. Gra-ah. At Chaz's call, a small dragon flew out from the depths of his deck. Next, it's my turn, draw. Now, I activate Armed Dragon LV3's effect. During my standby phase, I can send this card to the graveyard to special summon an Armed Dragon LV5 from my hand or deck. Evolve, my dragon. Roar. The small dragon clenched its fists, raised them toward the sky, and let out a cry. Its youthful voice deepened as its body grew larger and more muscular. Armed Dragon LV5, Level 5 WAND Dragon 2400 ATK. Moving on, I normal summon Masked Dragon. Masked Dragon, Level 3 FIRA Dragon 1400 ATK. That's it. Now, Armed Dragon, Direct Attack. Hikaru, LP, 3600. Next, Masked Dragon, Direct Attack. Chaz's excitement grew. If this attack landed, he would win. Too naive. I flip my set card, quick play spell, Scapegoat. The 4 classic, Fluffy, and Smug goats, red, blue, yellow, and pink, appeared. Seeing them, the thrill of victory and the thought of having defeated Jaden vanished from Chaz's mind. It was as if he'd been doused with cold water, bringing him back to his senses. Each sheep was essentially a shield with 0 ATK and 0 DEF. Scapegoat. Chaz tensed up as he saw the 4 ghostly sheep standing on the field. You could have used Scapegoat right away to reduce damage, but you didn't. You knew about Armed Dragon's effect and wanted to prevent it from evolving, didn't you? Hikaru nodded and looked upward. A student from North Academy used an Armed Dragon deck before. His performance wasn't great, but afterward, I specifically studied the effects of the Armed Dragons. So I know if Armed Dragon LV5 destroys a monster in battle, it evolves into LV7, right? Ugh. As expected of Hikaru, Bastion exclaimed. Even I didn't know about Armed Dragon LV5 before. Knowing your opponent as well as yourself is part of fusion tactics. Jaden, that sounded really cool just now. Cyrus looked back at Jaden in admiration, surprised he could say something so impressive and logical. Ha ha ha. Jaden scratched the back of his head. Hikaru said that back in the alternate dimension. Yeah, that makes sense. Cyrus awkwardly turned back to watch the duel. In any case, since he couldn't achieve an OTK, Chaz had no choice but to have Masked Dragon destroy one of the pink sheep. Just in case, I set a card and end my turn. As expected of a duelist capable of defeating Jaden, he was no pushover. Knowing your opponent as well as yourself, huh? He overheard Jaden and the others talking, but he had no interest in chatting during a duel, nor did he want to rely on reminders from others. However, he recalled his previous training and started to sweat a little. Despite having trained for a month with his company's AI, the AI only ever used a hero deck. It's my turn. Hikaru drew a card. I also activate an effect in my standby phase. According to Future Fusion's effect, on the first standby phase after activation, I reveal a fusion monster to both players, and the materials listed on that card will then be sent from my deck to the graveyard. Hikaru revealed Elemental Hero Flame Wingman. Shortly thereafter, Chaz suddenly perked up. Wait, yes. This was the feeling. Chapter 36, Fusion is all I see. Flame Wingman was a card that left a deep impression not just on Chaz, but on the other students as well. The reason was simple. During the entrance exam, Jaden had put on a show for the entire school, using Flame Wingman to tear through a professor's defenses. As a result, most freshmen were familiar with the card and knew its effect. However, Chaz's memory of it was even stronger because he had almost been defeated by it himself. Since it was a hero card, he immediately felt much more at ease. On the other hand, Hikaru was in a bit of a predicament. Sheep tokens couldn't be used as tribute for Flame Sword's realm. The effect of Flame Sword's realm required sending a face-up monster from the hand or field to the graveyard to special summon a Flame Swordsman fusion monster from the extra deck. Since sheep tokens couldn't be used for tribute summons and couldn't be sent to the graveyard, they were useless as fuel. Additionally, the hand he had just drawn was rather awkward. A complete hand brick. There was no way to clear the field, and his opponent still had a set card. However, if he switched to another strategy, he might have a chance to end the duel in one blow. But he needed to hold on to some of his hand cards, which could be risky. Also, it depended on whether Chaz would play into his plan. He glanced at Chaz, only to find Chaz glaring fiercely at Jaden, who had been cheering him on. Hikaru raised an eyebrow. No problem, victory was certain. I activate the continuous spell, Flame Sword's Realm, and use its effect, sending Gemnite Crystal from my hand to the graveyard to special summon Flame Swordsman in defense position. Flame Swordsman, level 5 FIR Warrior 1600 def. If possible, Hikaru would have preferred to use the sheep as a tribute to normal summon Crystal. With 2450 ATK, it could easily crush Armed Dragon LV5. But for now, this was the best he could do. He's passing the turn? Looks like Hikaru's hand isn't great, Bastion chuckled. Otherwise, he would have at least normal summoned a monster to take advantage of Flame Swordsrealm's effect, boosting Flame Swordsman's attack by 1000 to destroy Armed Dragon LV5. That's true, Cyrus nodded. But next turn, he'll be summoning Flame Wingman. Once that's on the field, with Flame Swordsrealm's effect, the duel will be decided in an instant. Chaz wasn't interested in listening, but his ears still caught every word. So that Flame Swordsrealm had such an effect. He felt relieved. Holding on to his trap card had been the right decision. Ha, Jaden, looks like this time, I'm the one who's going to win. Watch closely. He burst into laughter, his Chuyuni energy overflowing. My turn, draw. I normal summon X-Head Cannon. X-Head Cannon, level 4 Light Machine 1800 ATK. Battle. Armed Dragon LV5, destroy Flame Swordsman. Flame Swordsman couldn't resist and was instantly shredded by the dragon's claws. Next, you two, take down those annoying sheep. The yellow and red sheep were wiped out, leaving only the blue one trembling on the field. Battle phase ends, I activate Armed Dragon LV5's effect. I discard Paladin of Felgrand from my hand to destroy one of your monsters with a lower ATK. I destroy your last sheep. Chaz felt better the longer the duel went on, his mood was soaring. He had already planned out the next steps, and even though Hikaru kept using fusion cards, that didn't bother him at all. Because in the end, no matter what, he would have to rely on fusion monsters, right? Having fought against hero decks for so long, he had already memorized all their fusion monsters. I end my turn. Now, Armed Dragon LV5's effect activates. During the end phase of the turn it destroys a monster in battle, I send it to the graveyard to special summon Armed Dragon LV7 from my hand or deck. Armed Dragon roared again as countless pieces of steel flew in from a distance, snapping into place like armor, making it appear even more imposing. Armed Dragon LV7, level 7 WAND Dragon 2800 ATK. Wow, it got even stronger. So scary. Many students from the Fusion Club looked uneasy. What do we do? That armed dragon keeps getting stronger. And Hikaru's field is completely empty. Ha, I told you this guy wouldn't get far just relying on fusion, didn't I? Look, I was right. Bullshit. Next turn, Hikaru's Flame Wingman will hit the field. With Flame Swordsrealm, it'll be an instant kill. Chaz frowned slightly. So, Hikaru wasn't fully accepted by the Fusion Club? He had assumed that, as the club's rep, Hikaru would have the full support of its members, but it seemed quite a few people didn't acknowledge him. Then again, that was only natural. There would always be those dissatisfied with Hikaru, whether from Blue Dormer students with their own ideas. It was impossible to be liked by everyone. Not that Hikaru cared. He was here to win duels, not to make friends. My turn, draw. I activate Future Fusion's effect. During the standby phase, I fusion summon the monster revealed the last turn using its materials from the extra deck. Come forth, I fusion summon. Elemental Hero Flame Wingman. Flames surged as Jaden's favorite hero made a dazzling entrance. Whoa! It's Flame Wingman. Jaden cheered, even more excited than the duelists themselves. Ha! Now's the time, I activate my trap card. Thonian Polymer. What? That card. Jaden's excitement instantly cooled. Thonian Polymer? That's a trap that lets you tribute a monster upon fusion summon to take control of the opponent's fusion monster, the perfect counter to fusion decks, Bastion frowned. Damn, Hikaru's Flame Wingman. I tribute X-Head Cannon on my field to take control of your Flame Wingman. Elemental Hero Flame Wingman, level 6 WAND Warrior 2100 ATK. Hey, that's too underhanded. Yeah, exactly. You bastard, are you deliberately targeting our Fusion Club? Now, not only Hikaru's supporters but even those who usually wanted to see him lose protested. Ha ha ha. Fools! What do you mean underhanded? A card's effect is a card's effect, there's no such thing as cheap in a duel. Chaz shouted. And call me Chaz Lightning. Well, Jaden, looks like I've got this in the bag. But Hikaru doesn't seem to think so? Jaden pointed at Hikaru. What? Chaz immediately turned to look at Hikaru, only to see him simply rubbing his chin, without a trace of tension. Huh? Honestly, even though I already predicted what you would do, seeing it happen still feels a bit disappointing. What do you mean? I've long considered the possibility of my fusion monster being stolen. Hikaru shrugged. At the end of the day, every kind of tactic exists in a duel. What I'm after is the ultimate fusion, so I've always been prepared for the day I'd see my own monster standing against me. Whoa! Some of the Fusion Club students felt their fighting spirit reignite. My only regret is that you actually activated your set card at this exact moment, exactly as I predicted. Wait, what? Listen up, Chaz-kun, you keep looking at Jaden while dueling. Hikaru pointed a finger at his opponent. Ah! Chaz was startled and instinctively stepped back 2 paces. Too narrow-minded, Chaz-kun. Your goal is only to defeat Jaden, but my goal is the pinnacle of fusion. To achieve victory through fusion, no matter what. Hikaru declared, raising his spell card in his hand. I activate the fusion spell, Dark Calling. I banish monsters from my hand and graveyard as fusion materials to fusion summon a monster that can only be special summoned through Dark Fusion. I banish Avian and Burstinatrix from my graveyard. Transform into a demon that will shred everything to pieces. I fusion summon Evil Hero Inferno Wing. A sinister yet striking anti-hero emerged from the darkness. Evil Hero Inferno Wing, level 6 FIRFine to 100 ATK. Inferno Wing? Wasn't it supposed to be Flame Wingman? Aside from Jaden, almost everyone stared in shock. Next, I activate the equip spell, Spirit Illusion. This card can only be equipped to a level 5 or higher fiend or zombie monster. Once per turn, it allows me to special summon or fusion summon a doppelganger token with the same stats as the equipped monster. It's the fusion equip card he used on the day he joined the club. Oh, I remember. When this card's equipped monster attacks, it reduces the opponent's monster's ATK by the equipped monster's ATK. Someone recognized the card. That means it's a 2100 versus 700. By the way, Inferno Wing also has Flame Wingman's effect. Jaden laughed, explaining the ability with pure joy, relishing the fact that while everyone else was confused, he fully understood. Chaz's face turned pale. It also has Flame Wingman's ability to deal damage equal to the destroyed monster's original ATK. Battle! Inferno Wing, incinerate the dragon. Pitch black flames engulfed the steel dragon, shrinking it down to an even smaller size than when it was first summoned. Then, it was ruthlessly slaughtered by the demonic hero. Immediately after, the dark flames surged toward Chaz, who screamed in pain as he desperately tried to dodge, and collapsed onto the ground. Instant kill. Chapter 37, Top of the Class. Evil Hero, it actually looks pretty cool. As expected, men still love the darkness, huh? Even 2 days later, people at the academy were still talking about Evil Hero. On one hand, it looked fine. On the other, as that student said, men just love the darkness. Before transmigrating, Hikaru also liked Black Myth, Wukong, though unfortunately, he hadn't finished the game before crossing over. Chaz-kun, here's your report card. Take it. The teacher handed out report cards and evaluations one by one. Chaz looked at the miserable numbers on his report card and felt like smashing his head into the floor. He had disgraced his master. Staring at the evaluation, he recalled what had happened 2 days ago. After losing to Hikaru, while the Fusion Club students were either cheering or mocking him, Hikaru had simply collected his deck and told him calmly that his dueling wasn't pure enough, at least, not that day. If you want to defeat Jaden, this won't be enough, Hikaru's words still echoed in his mind. All you think about is beating Jaden. But Jaden, he's thinking about becoming the strongest duelist. Shame burned through him. He finally remembered how, that day, his master had dragged him to the AI training room, cursing at him with a cold snort. "You fool! If you don't want to become the strongest duelist, you'll be nothing but a mediocre nobody for the rest of your life. Get that through your head." Unfortunately, back then, his mind had been filled with the frustration of losing to Jaden and the pain of being ridiculed. But that Hikaru. He turned to look in Hikaru's direction. Despite being the Fusion Club's representative, opinions about him within the club were highly polarized. Those who respected him really respected him, while those who disliked him absolutely despised him. Outside of the club, while ordinary students were amazed by his dueling style and deck design, they found it hard to approach him. After all, he was a Fusion Club member. "How'd you do, Jaden?" "Ha ha ha. Over 80 in practical exams." Jaden laughed heartily, conveniently hiding his written test scores. "An 80 in practical exams." Chaz felt like he'd been struck by a hammer. He only got 40. Overly fixated on using ace monsters to decide the match. Should first use low-level monsters to test traps. Trap card usage is highly inconsistent, sometimes brilliantly disrupting the opponent's strategy, other times recklessly taking control of a monster like Flame Wingman without considering the situation. Extremely disrespectful toward opponents, spending the entire duel looking at the audience. Only focused on heroes, completely ignoring everything else. With a loud slap, he smacked himself in the face. Staring at the evaluation and the points deducted, his face was filled with despair. "Don't tell me. Am I going to lose to Jaden even in exam scores? If Master finds out, he'll kill me." "Hikaru, how did you do?" Bastion, sitting behind Hikaru, leaned forward curiously. He still hadn't forgotten what Hikaru had said earlier. "Ah, don't bring it up. I didn't do well." I messed up. I shouldn't have done that at the time." "Ah." Bastion's face was full of question marks. "Ah, Hikaru, you didn't do well either?" "Ah, well, it's fine. Let's work hard together next time." Hearing Hikaru say that, Jaden's face instantly lit up. He eagerly patted Hikaru on the shoulder, laughing cheerfully, almost as if this somehow erased the fact that his own written exam score was trash. Jaden, cold sweat ran down Bastion's forehead. "No matter what, we all saw that duel that day. There's no way Hikaru's dueling could have been bad, right?" "Yeah, Jaden. Even I wouldn't believe that. Hikaru-kun must be joking with us, right?" Jaden was stunned. "Wait, Hikaru, you lied to me. What reason would I have to lie to you for fun?" Hikaru shrugged, pulling out his evaluation sheet and showing it to them. "Look, only 97 points. Question mark. Wasn't the full score 100? The evaluation says I precisely capitalized on my opponent's mistakes, immediately recognized monster effects and evolutions, was willing to take direct attacks from powerful monsters for the sake of victory, accurately noticed my opponent's lack of focus, seized on their psychological shifts and executed a flawless reversal, securing an instant kill with no room for counterplay. I didn't give my opponent any time to react and performed nearly perfectly. That all sounds like praise." Cyrus stared at his own evaluation sheet, his face stiff. "Jaden, I got scolded so badly by the teacher." "That's strange. Then why did you get 97? Bastion asked curiously. Hikaru sighed. "Professor Sartor said my deck composition was poor, but I had too few monsters and not enough balance. He was the only teacher who deducted points, every other teacher gave me a perfect score." They leaned back in unison. "Isn't that right though? A normal deck is definitely focused on monsters, unless it's a rather introverted spell/trap deck, isn't it mostly centered around monsters?" But thinking about it, since Hikaru was aiming for the ultimate fusion, he filled his deck with fusions and even the monsters he included just to complete the fusion materials were only around 7 or 8, which is indeed too few. Nonetheless, when Hikaru said it, it seemed like he was extraordinarily dissatisfied. "I believe everyone has already seen your evaluations. This is only the early part of the first academic year, and you still have plenty of time to correct your issues, so don't be discouraged. As for the final grade sheet, it has already been posted on the Academy bulletin board, and interested students can go take a look. The top 10 students can apply for a scholarship from Professor Growler. Scholarship, might as well call it a bonus. Playing cards is ultimately a competition, and the students' future paths are either to become teachers or duelists. So, familiarizing oneself with duel tournaments early and understanding how duelists can make money in society is what Duel Academy aims to teach the students. Grades. After class, Hikaru went to the academy gates. On the bulletin board, a list was posted. He took a glance at the crowd. Good. First place. Ah, how can you be ahead of me by 10 points? Bastian, standing next to him, went crazy, rubbing his head hard. Impossible, when we checked the answers, weren't we almost identical? Could it be alchemy? Ah! Bastian screamed like Tom from Tom and Jerry. Bastian, who had long been at the top of the written exam rankings and was quite rational in actual duels, nearly screamed out loud for the whole academy to hear when he saw that Hikaru had actually beaten him. Moreover, he had 97 in actual duels. In duels, he could accept that Hikaru and Jaden were better than him and just try to win back later, but his written exam score. How could it be this much lower? Ha! He inhaled deeply. Looks like I was too arrogant before, Hikaru. Next time, I won't let you have first place. With that, he took heavy steps and walked in another direction, seeming like he was going to find teacher Banner, no longer caring about applying for the scholarship. Hikaru smiled. Too unsophisticated, Bastian. If we were comparing math, culture, physics, and chemistry, you could easily crush me, a transmigrator who left all knowledge behind in high school. But when it comes to card knowledge, you're not yet in my league. Laughing inwardly, Hikaru quickly ran to the professor's office to apply for the scholarship. To be honest, it wasn't much. After all, it was only the first semester exam, not even the final. But for a prestigious company like the Duel Academy under Kaiba Corp, even if it's not much, it's enough for Hikaru to splurge on different flavored bread for a year. Of course, the money wasn't for that. After becoming the representative of the Yellow Dorm, hearing that Hikaru's financial situation was poor and that he could only live on bread every day, Professor Sarter from Yellow Dorm gave him the privilege to eat at the Yellow Dorm's cafeteria for free as long as he kept performing well, ensuring he wouldn't starve at the academy. So, Hikaru had other plans for the money. Buying card packs, and trying alchemy. To be precise, experimenting with superfusion. Chapter 38, Superfusion, Second Trial. Tome-san, thank you for the trouble. It's no trouble at all. A few days later, Hikaru took a large box from Tome-san at the Academy's small store, swaying it gently as he carried it back to his dorm. The box was huge, about half a person's height. Students passing by saw Hikaru carrying such a large box, glanced curiously, but once they noticed the plant's label on the box, they lost interest. Hikaru returned to his dorm, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and began to unpack. A few days earlier, Hikaru had asked Tome-san to help him buy some things. Tome-san was the only one on the island who could connect with the outside world and order various items. If students wanted to buy cards or order anything, they always had to rely on her. This time, Hikaru had asked her to help him order some materials. Alchemy materials. He opened the package, revealing seeds, some specimens, and the majority of the items being living plants in flower pots, all the same species, Sundew. Master, are these the materials you wanted to experiment with? A voice from a hooded alchemist echoed in Hikaru's ear as he took out the items. Hikaru nodded, yes. Plants, ha. I entirely hate pharmacology. Things like healing potions or poisons, they have nothing to do with gold. Hikaru shrugged and said nothing. He hadn't bought these items to experiment with potions. A single Sundew wasn't expensive, maybe just a few dozen coins. His recent prize money was enough to buy a whole box of them. He wasn't very particular about life. As long as he could eat enough and didn't have to worry about starving, he didn't care. So, he spent half his prize money on this. He wanted to try out the power of superfusion. After 2 months of dueling, he felt his body had improved significantly under the enhancement of superfusion. Now, even when fusing pencils, he didn't feel exhausted like before. And this made him curious: how should he properly utilize the power of superfusion? It was known that in duels, superfusion used the energy generated from dueling to fuse cards in the deck into other cards. If the energy from the duel was strong enough, it might even create new cards. But, was this power random, or could it be controlled? He took out a mortar and pestle, placed a few sundews into it, and gently ground them up. Then, he poured the ground material into a small crucible, repeating the process with a lizard tail specimen, grinding it up and adding it to the crucible, stirring gently, and igniting the flame. This was alchemy. Next, he took it a step further. Hikaru found a normal monster card that Alchemist had previously given him, placed a wire mesh on top of the small crucible, and laid the card on it. Finally, Hikaru picked up the reassembled necklace, silently muttering a phrase in his mind, and immediately felt his strength drain away, almost collapsing to the floor. In harmony, a terrifying purple light erupted in the room. Under Hikaru's gaze, a thunderous crash came from the center of the crucible, and thereafter the purple light slowly dissipated, gradually returning to calm. Cough, cough, cough. The strange smell of gunpowder filled the room, and Hikaru coughed for a while before finally catching his breath. Not wanting anyone to discover it, the room had not been ventilated. Ah, I really need my own alchemy room. He took a sip of water, sat down in the chair, and couldn't move his legs. Phew, such terrifying power, my lord, what exactly is this? Don't ask what you shouldn't, Flame Sword. I've seen similar powers in my own dimension, but they were nowhere near as strong or terrifying as Hikaru-sama's. The three spirits, who had been too nervous to speak earlier, now began to discuss superfusion after seeing that Hikaru was not seriously hurt. You'll have the chance to see it later. As for now, I'm still not sure whether I should take this card. Hikaru shook his head without explaining. He walked over to the crucible and noticed the contents had disappeared as if they had never existed. The card on the wire mesh was emitting faint heat, and even without getting too close, he could feel a burning sensation. Hikaru used tweezers to pick up the card as it emitted a squeaking sound. He flipped the card over and looked at its appearance. The original monster card had become chaotic and twisted. On the left side, it had a plant-like structure, and on the right side, it retained its original appearance, though with some strange patterns now spiraling around it. The card's name had completely changed, but it still didn't display a full name. Only the word Sundew could be faintly distinguished. As for its effects, there were none at all. It had not been successfully created. The card Hikaru wanted to make was Predapplant Clemento Sundew, a low-level monster in the same series as the famous Predapplant. It had the effect of using itself and monsters on the field, hand, or any monster with a predator from the opponent's field as fusion materials to perform a fusion summon. Because it had a fusion effect and cheap materials, Hikaru had planned to try using alchemy and superfusion to make it. A failure? No, perhaps it wasn't a failure, just unsuccessful. After all, the card had truly changed halfway. Had he not grasped the key? He decided to try again. Master, your current body cannot handle a second attempt. If you try again, you may faint on the spot, Alchemist's voice reminded Hikaru. Or, perhaps you should try collecting more cards with spirits, otherwise, it's best not to try twice a day. Factually, the fusion failure might have been because your body couldn't bear the power of that card, causing a mistake in the process. Listening to advice is always wise. Hikaru knew Alchemist was an expert in this field, so he nodded and didn't try again. Instead, he packed up the materials. But, if what he said is true, shouldn't Hikaru just participate in higher intensity duels or even try dangerous shadow duels like he did with Crystal, which would allow him to accumulate this power quickly? Professor Banner had said that his current adaptability was only at 4 stars or slightly higher, and if he could improve, he might be able to perform his targeted fusion. Thinking about it carefully, that's still pretty difficult, though. Opportunities like crystals. Knock, knock, knock. Abruptly, the dorm door was knocked. Hikaru, are you there? It was Professor Sarter's voice. I'm here. It's like this: the principal asked you to come. Something about sacred something beast. 3 sacred beasts? Chapter 39, Shadow Riders. Following Professor Growler to the principal's office, Hikaru saw the other groups. Professor Growler and Zane, along with Professor Banner, who had brought Jaden, Bastion, Alexis, and Chaz. Amaji-kun, you're here too? Professor Growler nodded slightly. It seems only elites are present. He bent down slightly, looking at Jaden with a comical grin. And who is this? Could it be a mistake? There's someone here who shouldn't be, isn't there? Although he no longer targeted Jaden directly, the relationship between Professor Growler and Jaden was still not great. Don't mind it, Chaz. Jaden smiled at Chaz. He was talking about you. Chaz glared at Jaden. Maybe he meant Misawa? Stroking his cat, Professor Banner explained, originally, the principal asked me to call Amaji-kun, but I couldn't find him, so I brought Misawa from Yellow Dorm instead. So I'm the extra one? Bastion nearly stumbled. Hikaru stood to the side, thinking. It seemed due to him, Bastion's experiences had been altered from the original. But that wasn't much of an issue after all. In the original, Bastion became more and more like a background character as the story progressed. His only concern was whether this would affect Bastion's future relationships. The group entered the principal's office and listened to the reason they were called. The 3 sacred beasts cards? Jaden repeated in surprise. Yes, 3 ancient cards sealed on this island. This school has such a long history? Jaden looked up. Principal Shepard smiled as he explained, actually, this school was built upon the very location where those 3 cards were sealed. What? Hikaru snapped his fingers. Just like when I was a kid, people always said schools were built on graveyards. Upon hearing Amaji, the principal laughed heartily and right away continued explaining, according to the island's legend, when those cards re-emerge on the surface, the world will be engulfed by monsters, and chaos will consume everything. The darkness that corrodes human hearts will be unleashed, and soon, the world will be destroyed. These cards are said to hold such power. The students swallowed hard. That sounded terrifying. But Hikaru knew the legend was not a mere exaggeration. Although the events wouldn't unfold exactly as the students imagined, and the reasons behind the sacred beasts unsealing differed from their assumptions, the power of the sacred beasts was undeniable. One thing had to be clarified: the strength of a card's effect and the strength of its card spirit were not directly comparable. For example, the invincible Tearlaments deck, considered one of the most powerful unrestricted decks, could be severely weakened against the sacred beasts. This was because, in their setting, Tearlaments were merely the enslaved fragments of Visa's negative emotions. They couldn't even compare to Visa's full emotional avatars, let alone Visa's himself. Yet, in actual gameplay, Visa's card effects couldn't even match a Havnus. The Sacred Beasts cards, while unimpressive in competitive plays, possessed GX's strongest supernatural abilities such as age reversal, spirit's absorption of all cards in the world, and forcibly turning them into blank slates. Against monsters of this caliber, ordinary cards didn't stand a chance. Furthermore, even the so-called legend Principal Shepard mentioned would eventually come true. This meant that the power of the 3 sacred beasts far surpassed that of any ordinary card or even most card spirits. So, challengers seeking to unseal these cards have appeared. Who exactly? Zane asked in confusion. The Shadow Riders, Principal Shepard continued, they are a complete mystery, and one has already arrived on this island. As he spoke, he took out a box and revealed its contents: 7 objects that looked like keys. The 7 massive stone gates of the spirit doors protect these cards. The only way to open them is with these 7 keys. Therefore, I hope you all can safeguard these 7 keys. Even if you say that, how do we protect them? Chaz asked. Of course, by dueling. Everyone was startled. Well, what else did they expect? Hikaru really wanted to ask that. In this world, what else could they do besides duel? Were they seriously considering guns and weapons? In the duels to seize the keys, you must win. Only then can the spirit doors be opened. That is why I am entrusting them to you, the Academy's top duelists. The principal glanced at Growler and Banner. Though to be honest, some of you are just here to fill numbers. Well then, Principal, in that case, why don't I give my spot to Misawa? Banner stroked his cat and smiled. Well, Misawa? No problem, I accept. In short, Professor Growler stepped forward, picking up one of the keys. Just think of it like some thugs challenging our school and trying to take our signboard, right? No need to be scared, Principal. Ah, well, that's one way to look at it. The sequence of events was slightly different from Hikaru's memories. He picked up a key from the edge and hung it on his hand. The details might be off, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that as long as he held one of the 7 keys, one of the Shadow Riders would inevitably come after him for a shadow duel. In other words, energy would come knocking on his door. However, looking at the key in his hand, Hikaru contemplated the future. Since this world had alternate dimensions, he couldn't guarantee that the Shadow Riders were the same ones from the original, but regardless of who they were, their ultimate goal remained unchanged: to unseal the 3 Sacred Beasts cards. It might seem counterintuitive, but on the flip side, Principal Shepard had actually been deceived by Chairman Kajamaru. From the get-go, the 3 Sacred Beasts cards were entrusted to the principal by Kajamaru himself. Even so, at that point, they weren't ready to be unsealed. Only when all 7 keys had absorbed enough duelists' passionate fighting spirit could they be activated, thereby unsealing the 3 Sacred Beasts and allowing Kajamaru to regain his youth. So, whether the Shadow Riders won or lost, the seals would eventually be broken. But that didn't really matter. After all, Jaden would just defeat Kajamaru in the end, right? He only needed to use this opportunity to accumulate energy. That night, while studying his cards, Hikaru suddenly noticed that the world around him had lost its color. His entire surroundings were enveloped in a strange blue aura. Immediately after, the environment grew intensely hot and brilliant. A volcano? He surveyed down in shock. Somehow, he had been transported inside a volcano, standing right above the crater. Where is this? Not far away, another person appeared, screaming in surprise. Alexis? Hikaru glanced at her before lowering his gaze again. Beneath their feet was a massive transparent floor. It seemed to be made of some strange energy, as if it could vanish at any moment. In that instant, a gigantic fire dragon emerged from the magma, spun around, and then landed with a roar. Slowly, it transformed into a masked man. Who are you? Alexis instinctively shouted. I am Darkness, one of the Shadow Riders. According to my investigation, Hikaru, you are the representative duelist of this school. As my debut battle, you will be my first opponent. First, Hikaru didn't waste any words. He revealed his duel disc at once, which activated and shuffled automatically. This'll be your last. Chapter 40, All About Fusion. Heh, not bad spirit. Darkness sneered upon hearing Hikaru's words, then took out a blank card from his cloak. However, before we begin this duel, we need to make it clear, this is a shadow game. A shadow game? Alexis Rhodes said, shocked. Am I dreaming? The soul of the loser will be sealed in this card. I see. Hikaru was not surprised by it, it's finally here. A card that turns people into cards. After agreeing to the duel, both sides began. Darkness took the first turn. Though he wore a mask, Hikaru knew he must be the long-lost brother Alexis had been searching for, Atticus Rhodes. In the original, he was guided by a certain fragment and chose Jaden as his opponent. But soon after seeing him, Hikaru noticed he wasn't carrying that artifact. So he just picked a pretty strong opponent to duel? This world still had many differences from what he remembered. Duel. ×2. Darkness, LP, 4000. Hikaru, LP, 4000. My turn, draw. I normal summoned Black Dragon's chick. Black Dragon? Alexis's eyes widened, recalling something. Could it be? Yes, it's exactly that. Could it be? I activate Black Dragon's Chicks effect, sending it from the field to the graveyard. From my hand, I special summon Red Ice Black Dragon. Boom! Blazing flames surged beneath the duelist's feet, spreading across the sky. A scorching dragon of fire emerged from the magma, then landed on a floating platform, scattering molten lava to reveal its true form. Red Ice Black Dragon, level 70 ARK Dragon 2400 ATK. That legendary dragon. Alexis looked concerned. Amaji's ace is Flame Swordsman, right? This is really. Both Red Ice Black Dragon and Flame Swordsman were cards of the legendary duelist Joey Wheeler. However, compared to Flame Swordsman, Red Ice Black Dragon was undoubtedly the true ace. This duel was clearly unfavorable for Hikaru. I set one card and end my turn. Simply summoning a 2400 ATK monster with just 2 cards was actually quite strong in this world. After all, Jaden had to top deck Polymerization, Clayman, and Sparkman just to fuse Thunder Giant, which also had 2400 ATK. My turn, draw. Without hesitation, Hikaru activated a spell card. I activate the normal spell Fusion Deployment. This card can only be activated once per turn. The turn this card is activated, I cannot special summon non-fusion monsters from the extra deck. I reveal a fusion monster from my extra deck and special summon one of its listed fusion materials from my hand or deck. I reveal Labyrinth Tank and special summon Cannon Soldier from my deck. Next, I activate Cannon Soldier's effect. I tribute one monster to inflict 500 damage to you. Cannon Soldier transformed its own energy into an explosive shot, launching a cannonball straight at Darkness. Ugh. Darkness, LP, 3500. Upon taking damage, Darkness staggered backward, his clothes slightly torn. But now, you have no monsters on your field. Hikaru revealed his spell card. I activate the continuous spell over future fusion. I reveal Labyrinth Tank from my extra deck and send Gigatech Wolf from my deck to the graveyard. Then, I immediately activate the second effect of over future fusion. By banishing Gigatech Wolf and Cannon Soldier from my graveyard, I fusion summon Labyrinth Tank. Clang! Clink! The classic battle tank rolled onto the field once again. Labyrinth Tank, level 70 ARK Machine 2400 Def. Amazing! Alexis, observing closely, exclaimed. Not only did he deal damage, but he also special summoned a defender with 2400 DEF. I set 2 cards and end my turn. Humph, 2400 DEF? Darkness smirked at the field. Naive. Don't think that just because your defense matches Red Ice, you can stop me. My turn, draw. Ha, perfect. I activate the normal spell, Inferno Fire Blast. The turn this card is activated, Red Ice Black Dragon cannot attack, and it inflicts damage equal to Red Ice Black Dragon's ATK. Oh no! Watch out! Alexis warned urgently. Just 500 damage had already left Darkness visibly injured, 2400 damage was unimaginable. I activate my set card, Counter Trap, Fusion Guard. A counter trap? A fusion counter trap? Both duelists reacted in surprise, Darkness at his strategy being thwarted again, and Alexis marveling at how even his counter traps incorporated fusion. When a damage-inflicting effect is activated, this card negates that activation and effect. Then, I send one random fusion monster from my extra deck to the graveyard. A massive purple fusion symbol appeared before Hikaru absorbed Red Ice Inferno like a fist striking cotton. TCH. Darkness clicked his tongue. Hikaru glanced at his graveyard. The monster I sent is Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. Not good. Alexis tensed up. That was the worst possible choice. Well, it didn't really matter. Hikaru didn't mind at all. That said, considering his current relationship with Professor Growler, he could probably tell him his card had evolved and request another Ancient Gear Golem without issue. Great power always comes with risks. Looks like you've lost a strong ally. Darkness laughed, clenching his fists. I end my turn. Hikaru exhaled in relief. Unlike the original Jaden, he didn't have superhuman endurance, better to take fewer hits if possible. My turn, draw. Oh. He drew a powerful card. Scatter Fusion. Phew, lucky draw. I activate the continuous spell, Scatter Fusion. Scatter Fusion? Another brand new fusion card? Alexis watched as Hikaru played yet another fusion-related card, her amazement growing. She had only seen Hikaru duel Jaden during the representative selection tournament. At the time, she was impressed but couldn't fully grasp it. Now, she realized his pursuit of fusion was truly extreme, and so far in this duel, every single card he played was fusion-related. She sighed deeply. And how about herself? Did she have that pure duelist's heart? No, perhaps what she truly wanted was to find her brother. She looked across the field. If her brother were still here, he'd be just as tall as that man. Noticing Alexis looking at him, the masked duelist grinned eerily. Hikaru's duel was indeed more formidable than he expected, albeit that may be true, he had a surefire way to win. That wraps up this part of What If Fusion Deck User in a Different Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.